Spider-Man. Such an iconic superhero. An average beta male turns into a sigma male thanks to the spider bite of 87. Now, if you don't know me, I love Spider-Man. I consider him to be one of my favorite superheroes of all time. I even made a video a while back on what I believe to be the best Spider-Man TV series out there, Spectacular Spider-Man. And looking back, I still think I did a good job of that video, but I really didn't give this show enough justice, since I genuinely love it. I would even say that it's one of my favorite superhero cartoons of all time. But we are not talking about Spectacular Spider-Man today. Instead, I want to talk about an animated series that unfortunately has been forgotten through time, and no one seems to talk about it. A Spider-Man series that is so weird and bizarre that I think I like it, or maybe I don't like it. I don't know, it's weird. And yes, I'm talking about Spider-Man, the new animated series. Spider-Man, the new animated series, God, that's such a weird title, is yet another story about a young teenager named Peter Parker who fights crime as Spider-Man. Now, of all the Spider-Man shows that have been released over the years, this has to be the most bizarre and strange series out of all of them. Why do I say that? Well, allow some weird, skinny Irish lad to go on about this forgotten Spider-Man series and see if it still holds up to this day. Now, before I get into the show itself, I want to briefly talk about its development. This series was initially planned to be an adaptation of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics by Brian Michael Bendis. Apparently, he wrote a pilot to the series, and they wanted to go for a more mature and dark tone of the series, which was a contrast from the more kid-friendly Spider-Man series that we had gotten previously. But around 2002, Sony released Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movie, and this movie was a humongous hit in the box office, and it was beloved by Spidey fans. So the higher-ups of Sony wanted this series to be a direct continuation of the Raimi movie, while still keeping the mature tone in the original pitch. And did they stay faithful to the Raimi movie? No, not really. There are many story elements here that aren't connected to the movie, and would also not line up with later installments. But thanks to the series airing on MTV, they could get away with a lot more than the previous series. Characters can actually say swear words, like crap. And Spider-Man can actually throw some punches. Yeah, in the old 90s show, Spider-Man was not allowed to punch or kick his enemies. Why exactly? Well, it was too violent, I guess? I'm not too sure. Now, enough of all the development. What's the actual show like? Well, MTV's Spider-Man, as I'm calling it from now on, since that's much easier than calling it Spider-Man the new animated series, takes place with Peter attending college with his friends Mary Jane Watson and Harry Osborn. And like I said earlier, it attempts to continue the story from the Raimi movie, but it sort of fails to do so. First of all, none of the original actors returned for the series. Like, none of them. Instead, we got Neil Patrick Harris playing both Spider-Man and Peter Parker. And I'm just gonna say it now. Neil Patrick Harris is not a good Spider-Man.
Did he just say, aye, he did?
Let me explain. Neil Patrick Harris is a great actor, there's no doubting that, but in this series, he sounds so bored and doesn't have the same energy as the other Spider-Man actors. Like, when I listen to him, I don't imagine Peter Parker talking, it just sounds like Neil Patrick Harris talking.
Harry, I get that you think Spider-Man killed your father. On account of he did?
In fact, that's the same with most of the voice actors here. They don't sound terrible per se, but they all just sound so bored. It doesn't help that some of the characters here aren't really the best. I wouldn't say they're terrible, not at all, but some of them are just kind of bland. Spider-Man himself is okay, I guess. They don't really bring anything new to the table. He could say a funny line here or there, but he isn't as deep or compelling as previous and later Spider-Man characters. Mary Jane Watson here is fine, I guess, but there's nothing really new or interesting to her character. She's just another character in Peter's life. Same goes for J. Jonah Jameson. While I usually love his character in anything Spider-Man related, he just is kinda weak here. I don't hate him, not at all, but he weirdly seems more calm and less angry here. Plus, his voice acting just doesn't have the same energy as other J. Jonah Jamesons.
Cop, well, it's good to know there's the occasional human in your viewfinder. This godforsaken town is overrun with animals.
And of course, there's Harry Osborn. Oh, Harry Osborn. Harry Osborn. I'm just gonna get this out of the way. I do not like his character. Yes, I said it! I don't like Harry Osborn's character. Fucking hell. He's completely different from the Raimi movie counterparts, which I wouldn't mind, but again, he's just so bland and generic. Plus now he acts all cool and thinks he's a Sigma male. Why do I keep mentioning Sigma males? Fucking hell. Plus, something about his design just angers me, and I don't know why, but it just angers me. There's also this new character that was made specifically for the show, and her name is... oh god, I'm actually gonna fuck up this name so bad. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Indria Indi Damojo... oh my god. Why? Indria Indi... okay, I cannot pronounce that last name, so I'm just gonna call her Indria. And I honestly don't have much to say about her character, to be honest. She makes a decent love interest for Peter, and she does somewhat affect the plot as the series goes on, but I honestly just didn't really care for her character at all. I did like what they did with her in the final few episodes, but again, her character was just nothing special to me. She was just kind of... there, I guess. But this is Spider-Man, and he has lots of memorable villains that can be both deep, relatable, and even threatening. And I will admit, I do really like how they handle the villains here. We got villains like the Kingpin, the Lizard, Silver Slade, and Electro, and I love all of them, especially Electro, because they actually take time to develop his character. We see that he was bullied by almost everyone around him, and it got to the point where he has a mental breakdown and just can't handle it anymore. He eventually gets into a serious accident that turns him into Electro, and what does he do to the people that bullied him? He fucking kills them. Like I mentioned earlier, the series goes for a more adult and mature tone with its story. I'm not talking adult humor as in swearing all the time and having annoying jokes that aren't funny in the slightest, but they do tell a more grounded and sort of edgy story. The show isn't afraid to take itself seriously from time to time, which is something I really admire, and the characters actually feel like they're in college. They behave and talk in a way that feels sort of real. They act like teenagers, and it never feels fake in the slightest. I just wish that the voice acting was a bit better, but hey, I can't ask for everything, I guess. But I think it's time I talk about an aspect of the show that people remember the most, and that is the animation. Now it's clear to see that this show is animated with computer animation, which was somewhat new for the time and wasn't common in most cartoons. Now people seem to either love the animation or hate it, with many people saying how weird and outdated the animation is. What do I think of the animation? I actually kinda like it. I mean, sure, is it outdated? Yes, of course it is. But at the same time, I can't ignore just how ambitious the animation was for the time. The studio that was behind the animation here was Mainframe Entertainment. And if you don't know who they are, they're basically the kings of early computer animation. They created some of the first ever computer animated series back in the early 90s, like Reboot and Transformers Beast Wars. While their animation has obviously aged poorly, they still helped pioneer TV computer animation. So it makes sense why they were chosen to do the animation for the series. The entire design and look of this show is attempting to replicate the look of a comic. They achieved this look by adding an outline to the 3D models to make it look more 2D. They even added lots of shading and color to the characters. Now I won't lie and say the characters look amazing because they don't. I'm pretty sure they use motion capture to animate the movements of the characters, and it just looks off. Like the characters just stand around talking to each other without much expression. Oftentimes the animation can look sort of lifeless, only showing the bare minimum of expressions in the faces. And it doesn't help that some of these models just look weird. Even the Spider-Man model looks really strange. I can't put my finger on what is exactly wrong with the model, but it looks sort of blocky and broken. I think the best way to describe the characters here is that they look like they were pulled from an early PS2 game. But the animation isn't straight up awful, as it really shines in some of the action scenes. These sequences can be super fun and entertaining to watch. The way Spider-Man swings around the city, or how he fights off his enemies, is really well done. And since Spider-Man can now throw some actual punches, it makes the fight scenes even more intense and engaging to watch. Even the lighting here can genuinely look incredible. Some shots and sequences look like they were taken right out of a comic, and the shading on some of the characters as well really makes them feel more alive, along the cell shading. It amazes me how sometimes the animation can look really bad, then other times it can look fantastic. Even the effects are really impressive. Like, look at Electro here. His design is so cool and unique, with all the lighting effects, and even the blue color scheme works really well here. It's weird. I've never seen a show before where the animation is both really good and really bad. If they really wanted to replicate the look of the comics, they should have gone for a 2D route, maybe something similar to the Ultimate Spider-Man series. It would have been really cool if they went for a similar animation style as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, giving the animation a bouncy and unique design to it. But at the same time, this was the early 2000s, and I doubt they would have been able to achieve this style of animation. So for what it is, the animation was pretty ambitious for the time, and it definitely has its moments when it really shines, but it has shown its age, and I can see why people don't really like the animation. Honestly, after watching this show, I can sorta see why it's been forgotten. Apart from the unique and interesting animation, there's not much else to the series. While the story does have a more adult and mature tone to it, in the end, it's nothing really special. It's just another story about Peter Parker fighting crime as Spider-Man. If you look back at Spectacular Spider-Man, they really showed how much Peter's struggling to be Spider-Man, and how tempted he was to give up. But here, they don't really show a struggle all that much. Sure, we do see how difficult it can be for him, but it doesn't have the same pacing or emotion as other shows. Plus, all the characters here are just so bland, and I didn't find myself caring for most of them. The show only lasted 13 episodes, so I'm guessing they didn't have enough time to flesh out Peter's story and other characters. It's a shame that this series got cancelled after only one season. Maybe if they got another season, they could have fleshed out the characters more, and also expand on Peter's story. In the final episode, they end the series on a cliffhanger, where Peter decides to give up being Spider-Man due to one of his closest friends dying because of his actions. It would have been really cool to see a second season go deep into what Peter's going through, but unfortunately, we never got a second season. It's a shame we never got another season, since if handled right, they could have fixed most of my issues with this season. But a common thing with most Spider-Man series is that they seem to get cancelled just before they get good. Just like Spectacular Spider-Man. So, in the end, is MTV's Spider-Man good? Well, not really, but there is a charm to the series. You can definitely tell that the people behind the series had a deep love for Spider-Man and wanted to make the best series they can make. But when compared to other Spider-Man series, it really could have been better. It's a shame that not a lot of people talk about this series, since the animation is so unique and can look very appealing sometimes. And I like the more adult and mature tone they went with this series. I hope that one day, this series could get another chance. Animation has evolved a lot since then, so I would love to see a Spider-Man series with a more mature tone and a comic book style animation. But hey, I guess that's why we have Spider-Man Into Spider-Verse, which is one of the best Spider-Man movies of all time, and you cannot fight me on that because it is the best Spider-Man movie of all time. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Sorry if it was a smaller video than usual, but I got some bigger videos in the work, so stay tuned for them. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed the video, hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.